So much of our rugby is familiar, close to home. Grand Slams in the Five Nations, the Six Nations. Grand days out in places we know. But the finest contribution ever by Welsh rugby was made in an alien environment, about as far from home as you can go. Every 3 or 4 years since 1888, the best players of England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales, what we now call the British and Irish Lions, have been going on tour to the major rugby-playing countries of the Southern Hemisphere: New Zealand, Australia and South Africa. The Lions have won 6 times in Australia, 4 in South Africa, with a drawn series in 1955. But in New Zealand, only the once. "40 years ago, rugby tours were long. The 71 tour would last from May to August, 15 weeks, 26 games in total. Compare that with the Lions of 2009, 6 weeks, 10 games. For me, Hong Kong is the one and only pause, but flying to New Zealand is still a slog through the time zones. 40 years ago, the Lions BOAC Boeing 707 stopped at Frankfurt, Rome, Tehran, Delhi and here, and from here to Brisbane, Sydney, and from Australia to New Zealand. They played 2 games in Australia, the first in Brisbane against Queensland. They lost, prompting Queensland coach Des Connor to describe them as the worst Lions ever. They beat New South Wales in Sydney, but nobody in New Zealand thought there would be anything but a routine series win for the All Blacks. I've been coming here for nearly 30 years, and in all that time I've seen the All Blacks lose once, one single game, and even then in 1993 they went on to win the series. Touring New Zealand is an exercise in being crushed, every time, bar one. Rugby in 1971 was red.
Edwards, Barry John. Nicely along from Hall to John Dawes. This is Bevan, inside steal, beautifully tackled by Ray. Kicked on by John Taylor. Booted on by Barry John. Can John make it? This would be a remarkable score. Delmy Thomas again. Edwards to Barry John. Out to John Dawes. John Williams. Gerald Davis. Can Ian Smith get him? It's Gerald Davis for Wales.
Wales had won the Grand Slam in the Five Nations Championship that year, and now they supplied, for the first time, the captain of the Lions, John Dawes. They also supplied the coach, Carwyn James, who was not the coach of his country and never would be. Complex Carwyn, often troubled in life, brought simplicity to rugby. His weapon of choice, the brain.
Think about it. That's the important thing. Every single one of you, think about it, think about it, think about it. It's a thinking game.
The coach of Llanelli sifted his way through the Welsh team. He carefully researched the best of the rest of Britain and Ireland. Mike Gibson, Ray McLaughlin and Willie John McBride of Ireland, John Pullin and David Duckham of England, Sandy Carmichael and Ian Mighty Mouse McLaughlin of Scotland. New Zealand gave them no chance, but inside the mind of the coach, thoughts were spinning, ideas were forming. He was putting his lines together, quietly.
A different kettle of fish to any coach I'd ever met in my life before, because coaching was the bawling, snarling scenario, but not Carwyn. Very quiet and just very precise and accurate.
Eyes on the ball, John.
Well, Carwyn was really an amateur psychologist. Not only was he a great coach, but he treated every player individually. I was very physical in our training, and I was banned from training on Mondays, so the weekends for me were great. People like Derek Quinnell and Chico Hopkins had to train twice a day because they were lazy and perhaps not quite as fit as they should be. So he did treat every player as an individual.
I think Carwyn would have done a lot of homework. I can't remember who was manager of Man United at the time. I think it might have been Sexton or O'Farrell. And I know he went up there for a couple of days just to watch what it was like to deal with players, professional players, because you must, although we weren't professional players, to all intents and purposes, we were for that 3 months.
We needed to play a 15-a-side game that each individual player had a contribution to make to the whole. We knew where New Zealand's strengths lay. We knew the kind of patterned play that New Zealand had, and it was very much a pattern. There was no real pattern to us, our game, I don't think, other than to win the ball and to do the best we could with it by running in attack against New Zealand. That was the plan. That was the way that we believed as individual players, as a group of players, how to play the game.
It's hard to say why it has always been so difficult to win here. Perhaps New Zealand plays tricks. Stunning New Zealand, full of sights and sounds and smells that are totally alien. It's beautiful, but it's also a country full of menace and danger. Fall in there and you're dead. And their rugby's a bit like that.
New Zealand were the kings, and they thought their forwards were the cream.
Pretty useful wheel that by New Zealand, and here's the real power stuff.
Never worry about coming second to a pack they were facing, and that's their mentality.
The kind of philosophy in New Zealand was that they were always better than us, and that possibly they were much more physical than we were. I mean, they had a plethora of tremendous players. Patrick was a fantastic player. Alex Wiley was a fantastic player. Sutherland was a great player, number 8. And with Meads.
Picked up by Colin Meads. Referee waving play on, and it's out to the wing quarter.
That's what makes you want to play the game. It's standing up to the best. Oh, you consider to be the best. And certainly sort of New Zealand's reputation was such that at the time they certainly were.
Marshall Scudder. He's over. Scudder at goal.
Rugby union was invented in England for young gentlemen. A chap called Charles Munro brought rugby here when he returned from his English public school. But soon, it was working New Zealanders who were playing. Here, they loved the sport invented for gentlemen, hated the amateurism designed to keep them out. They towed the amateur line because in such geographical isolation, there was a reluctance to break sporting links. But those ties could be a little strained. In Te Kuiti, King Country, where Colin Meads played his rugby, he was an All Black for 14 seasons. Here they would have been aware that over in England there was a rugby establishment that was ever so slightly suspicious of the likes of Colin Mead playing their game. Not a gentleman. And rough, tough Meads set about the representatives of that old establishment with relish.
Some of our rugby in those days was just win at all costs and test matches and whichever you thought you could do, whatever way you thought you could do.
And it's getting like the old Maulin goal in there. Colin Meads trying to sort it out, but Willie John McBride, Tom Lister, Sean Lynch, this is an absolute tragedy.
You were the enforcer.
Well, that's what they say, but not, I was just one of them.
Well, you know, well, as I say, you didn't just go out there to hit somebody for the sake of hitting anyone. You go and play the game, but if you Jersey pulled me and you'd give an elbow, and if you did it again, well, next time it might be, you do that again and I'm going to bloody hit you.
Yes, there was kicking, there was punching, there was gouging, there was fighting, but again, I expected it, and as you said, as long as we all the players stuck together, all the forwards stuck together, then okay, we'll take it.
Not a pleasant sight to see in rugby.
We're going to show you, we're the colonials and we're not meant to be good at this game, and we'll show you that we can play this game better than you.
There were 10 games to play before the first test, 5 on the North Island and 5 on the South. There were interesting subplots in these warm-up games for the 4 tests. The youngest Lion, 20-year-old wing John Bevan, scoring 6 tries in his first 3 games. The weather, surprisingly fair. The Lions were winning. Nothing was going wrong at all, but nothing was going particularly right. It was steady, but nothing was happening to make New Zealand sit up. Until they came to Game 5, their last of Stage 1 on North Island. They arrived in the capital.
Maybe Wellington were being talked about as probably the best side in New Zealand at the time. And to this day, it probably ranks as one of the best games that I ever played in.
Gibson, here's Dawes, the double round. Pass Cleland. Williams, Bevan.
I just remember the quality of the running, the wizardry and the silkiness of the back division with Mike Gibson and John Dawes and Barry that really stood out for me.
The ball's all over the place, no one seems to want it. This is Slattery. Here's a chance, out to Duckham. Must score, I think, if he's got the pace. John.
We probably averaged about 25, 26. And so probably just peaking nicely. And obviously we need a bit of luck and weather-wise and so on. And everything clicked. And you could feel it from the start. Marvellous, great feeling.
The Lions ran up nearly a half-century of points, with Bevan scoring 4 tries.
Gibson. Bevan. Try to Bevan. Marvellous try.
You're the most important person in the world. Make something happen. And that's the way I felt. I've got the ball, something's going to happen here. Show what you can do. Anything in a different coloured shirt was the enemy.
There we go. Bevan. Davies. Try on here, pull it.
That victory was mind-blowing. And it really taught, not only New Zealanders, but the rest of the world how rugby could be played.
There's McBride. There's Carmichael got the try. Look at this ball popping out. There's John sliding through. Gibson the try will make it 40 points. Round goes Gibson.
The grand prize in New Zealand's provincial rugby in 1971 was the Ranfurly Shield. You won it by challenging the province that held the shield. You travelled to their backyard, and if you beat them, you became the holders until a province came to your home and took it from you. In late June 1971, Canterbury had been beating all challengers for the Loggerwood, as the Ranfurly Shield was called, for nearly 2 years. The Lions couldn't challenge for any provincial trophy, but on the Saturday before the first test, they were facing the Ranfurly Shield holders in their backyard. The Lions were playing with grace and technical superiority, but something was about to come crashing at them.
The nastiest game I've ever seen or witnessed. I think the New Zealand coach likened it to the Battle of Passchendaele, I think it's been the word used. It was horrendous. The ball was irrelevant.
It was the last game before the test. I think the All Blacks knew which 15 were playing. There was quite a few of us playing on the day. And I think that they wanted to see how tough we were. And if we fall by the wayside in the meantime, so be it.
It wasn't a team thing. It was just mentioned as a front row sort of thing, or amongst the front row, that they weren't going to let anything happen. And I was playing on the side of the scrum at that stage for Canterbury, and I remember one of our players, prop, turning around and saying, "Get your bloody head up, otherwise something might happen." And next thing, it did happen.
I was just worried about hooking the ball. I didn't know anybody's boring in, but I think Hoppy thought that Sandy was trying to get underneath him, and he just said to me, he said, if he continues this, I'm going to have to deal with it. And he told him not to, and then 2 scrums later, he must have done it again, and that's where he got one black eye. Anyway, I don't know where the other one come from, but he wasn't a pretty sight, no.
Sandy Carmichael was out of the tour, the other first-choice prop too.
Ray McLaughlin, realising what was happening, used, shall we say, the strength of his hand and broke a finger.
Willie John says it pretty correctly that he had to be a complete fool hitting Alec Wiley in the head.
Yeah, and ironically, I mean, it might sound a bit funny, but I was going in because I think him and Hamish MacDonald were having a disagreement. And I went in there to do something, and next thing, bang, Ray hit me, but he hit me just sort of under the cheek, opened it up, but of course in those days you didn't have to worry about the blood bin.
It helped team spirit. It was us against the rest of New Zealand. Okay, there were a few expats living out there, but nevertheless, it was a party of 30, and we had to survive in our own little cocoon and take on everything that New Zealand had to throw at us.
This is good. Beautiful ball to Bevan. He's under the post. Bevan, 1 yard short, he's in.
Also, having survived that kind of physicality, New Zealand themselves knew that we were no ordinary team, that we were not going to be a team that knuckled under, that we would be a team that would stay the course.
10 matches played, 10 matches won, 1 battle fought, with the loss of 2 props. Replacements were sent for: Stack Stevens of England and Jeff Evans of Wales. Now for the first test against the New Zealand All Blacks. There was a front row to rebuild quickly. Sean Lynch and Ian McLaughlin would pack down on either side of hooker John Pullen. The Lions would still target the All Black scrum. But Carwyn James was working on something else. The Lions had just met the tough Canterbury fullback Fergie McCormick. Carwyn was interested in meeting him again.
A long kick for McCormick, an important one.
McCormick was playing for Canterbury, and he was a fullback the following week in the first test in Dunedin. And he just said at half-time, "Come over and sit next to me," and which I did. And he just said to me in Welsh, "Diddorol? Interesting?" And I said, "Yeah, it is interesting." Nothing was said. I knew what he meant, and it was McCormick. And I just looked at McCormick during that game, where his positioning was, where it was likely to be, looked at his game, basically, for the next week. Unfortunately, the following week, he never played for New Zealand again.
The first test was to be played back in Dunedin at Carisbrooke. The crowd would be 45,000 strong. A strange blend of gnarled old workers of the land coming down from the Otago Hills, old gold rush country, mixing with students from the University of Otago. Together, they trailed out of town through, well, it's not exactly an urban wasteland, but through these scenes of mangling and bending out of shape. It's the perfect setting for rugby's original House of Pain. Carisbrooke is not the biggest stadium in New Zealand, but it is the most raucous thanks to those scarfies, the students wearing their scarves. Those that paid, well, they filled those terraces over there. And those that didn't, well, they went in their thousands up onto the railway embankment. And it was announced that the 3 o'clock express, the Southerner, would be slowing down, would whistle as it passed, but it would not be stopping.
We're quite near to the Antarctic because there's quite a stiff southerly blowing for this, the first test match, which has caused tremendous interest here in New Zealand. More than 50,000 people will pack into the ground. Those people there are standing on Scottish Grandstand, a free view of the test match.
Went with about 6 others in a little mini minor, Christchurch to Dunedin, fabulous time, but you're on the embankment at Carisbrooke and you're shoulder to shoulder with other people. Yeah, no, it was just amazing to be squashed there and trying to peer over other people's shoulders, but it was wonderful, wonderful atmosphere, yeah.
You wanted to go there to win against New Zealand. That was the aim, the only aim, the goal. You could have lost all the provincial games, if you like. It didn't matter. To play in the test matches and beat New Zealand, that was the challenge. That was the ultimate goal.
We knew that we were in for a real battle, but we were the All Blacks and we were playing at home, so we knew we were in with a shot.
The switch, John Taylor's switch. 13 there is wing three-quarter Ken Carrington, one of 7 new caps in this All Black side, being captained for the first time by Colin Meads.
I was struggling because I didn't know half the team. The first year in the All Blacks, and you don't know whether to give them a roasting or and, you know, I was rather brutal sort of a captain, you know, put it that way.
But this is the big, mighty Meads himself.
I must confess, you know, when I first met Colin Meads, I didn't know how to address him. I think I called him sir or something like that. And no, mate, he said, you're my teammate. Call me Pine Tree.
Meads, the big man himself, the mighty Meads.
King Meads of New Zealand, he was an awesome figure. Colin was the talisman, there's no doubt, of New Zealand rugby.
Nicely back. Here he is once again, the man himself, 10 yards short of glory. The slip-in, Mervyn Davis, forced over his own line.
I was convinced there was more than 15 All Blacks on the field because all it seemed to do that we were just running from one corner to the other, trying to tackle as many people as we could.
Number 1 prop forward, Brian Muller, 17 stone of him. Good deflection at the back. This is the new cap, Peter Whiting. Good attacking stuff from Burgess there.
It was wave after wave of All Black attacking rugby.
Game now sweeping up towards the Lions line, beautifully out in the All Black side. Brian Williams, first run of the game here for Carrington.
Willie John said the night before that they would come at you and they would hit you with everything but the kitchen sink. And as Lynchy said 20 minutes into the game, I'm sure I saw a kitchen sink flying across the field. New Zealand were immense.
Williams coming up, Bevan coming across. That's Bevan.
They look to intimidate, they look to crush if they can, and they look to pulverise up front.
Nicely away, there's a Hunter going for the corner. He beats one man. He's in. Touch, he's in touch.
I think what we surprised them with is that we didn't succumb.
This is the sort of rucking where the New Zealanders get good ball. That's it, stolen away by Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick straight through 2 men.
Even when we had the pressure on them the first sort of 25 minutes, we couldn't score. If we had a score, then it might have broken them, but it didn't happen. They held us out, they tackled us and kept us out, and so I guess it was a bit of a downer for us. You know, we thinking, you know, we were dominant and we couldn't put them away, and so psychologically, I think they sort of came back at us saying, hey, we've got a chance here, boys.
It's Willie John McBride opposite Meads. Behind Willie John, Sean Lynch and Delmy Thomas. Chico Hopkins to Barry John, John Dawes, that's the big man, that's John Bevan. Number 8 for the chance down, here could be a try, it's a try for the Lions, for front row forward, Ian McLaughlin.
Fantastic try, fantastic, 62 yards, or was it metres, I can't remember.
Ian McLaughlin of Scotland, the little prop, the mighty mouse has done it. What a moment for him. 3-0 then to the Lions.
All of a sudden you could see the confidence in the Lions growing, and Barry started getting more possession, started controlling the ball, and demonstrated one of the finest performances of the art of kicking a rugby ball that I've ever witnessed.
Nice chip through that by Burgess. To Barry John. McCormack, 10 yards from his own line.
Can I ask you about Barry John? Because you played against him. It has gone down in legend that he was given the brief to stretch you.
Well, he stretched me all right. I just seemed to be chasing the ball all day and not being able to get my hands on it, to do something with it.
John, beautifully flighted ball. McCormack has got a turn.
Kill him. He crossed him all over the place. And people always thought that with these players, put them under pressure, kick high kicks, the up and unders, and boys chasing at him. No, that's the last thing you want to do. That means you're playing him into the game, and the crowd will be with him. The one thing you want to do is to keep him quiet and the crowd quiet. So you just drop him short all the time. And it was a bit sticky as well that particular day. So it was easy to just drop him short, move him sideways, all over the place. And in the end, you could see the crowd was getting at him now. He was the local hero. That was his home patch, that area. Just a simple bit of thinking. Don't do the obvious, you see.
Did some part of you secretly admire that, or were you just cursing him all the way?
Well, you didn't go and kiss him, did you? Well, he was just... he did worry me a wee bit, and perhaps, I didn't verbally curse him. I just thought that little prick over there he's kicking another one across to the other side, and the Lions, they put chasers on the ball also, and it left you no option either just to kick it straight out or just be mauled up and tied up a bit.
Hopkins, the boot of Barry John. McCormack is there with Davis.
You have your bad days, and I don't think I had that bad a day, but let's be honest, I didn't play for New Zealand again after that.
Back to Barry John, he knows what to do. And that's it! The Lions have won the Test match! What a magnificent victory it's been! One of the rare moments of rugby history abroad. And now this tour is well and truly on the road. What a day. What a tremendous moment. 9 points to 3 the score.
We had 2 from this club going out to represent Great Britain in rugby. The coach, Carwyn, and Barry, who really made his name.
Followed them avidly in the middle of the night. We all met here, the team all came here, and we listened to it on the radio, and it was an amazing feeling to be here. It was exactly as if we were out there. And Vimy John, Barry's mother, would be shouting and giving advice exactly as if she was talking to Barry, and she knew rugby. We had a long table in those days, and we had laid out a rugby pitch. And whenever there was a break, then they would put pint bottles of bitter here perhaps, and then pint bottles of mild there with different colours on them, and one would be the Lions and the other one would be the All Blacks, and then they would picture this match on the table and move with the ball and move with the... They were there in that particular wireless set. They were there. And when they won in the end, of course, the whole place erupted.
Very good. Great show. Very good, Barry.
And many of us crawled back to bed about 6 o'clock in the morning, and believe me, headaches the following day.
There was a lot didn't go back to bed.
Remarkably, given that they had won practically no ball, the Lions were one up in the 4-test series. They now set off for 3 games before the second test, down to Invercargill, up to Taranaki. But they were winning and settled. It wasn't the very first time the Lions had won the opening test of a series. They had won back in 1930. But this time it changed the dynamic of the tour. New Zealand realised these Lions were a bit special.
We travelled to most of the games, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Gareth Edwards, Barry John, Mike Gibson, John Dawes. Do they live in the memory still, or you? Yeah.
Particularly Mike Gibson.
Gerald Davies.
Yeah.
JPR Williams. The lock from Willie John McBride. The front row. Unfortunately, they went down to Canterbury. That was a bit of a mess down there.
It was a mess.
Yeah. So things went a bit haywire down there. And,
Canterbury said it wasn't their fault.
No, they didn't.
We've always had good scrums, so that was taken for granted that you're going to get good possession.
Yeah.
I think they started to play much more aggressively, in the backs in particular.
There's an adage that the All Blacks remember their defeats more than their victories. Well, they'd lost. They made changes for the second test to be played back in Christchurch. From places like this, Dommet in North Canterbury, there would be a rugby migration down to Lancaster Park to see if the All Blacks had been stung into action. A single change was made on the Lions side. The young John Bevan was starting to feel the effects of being away from home so long. David Duckham came in on the left wing for the second test.
On the left then, the Lions with the usual kick-off, the switch, straight away, Gerald Davis, ever alive and alert. That's been the pattern of the Lions' play on this tour.
As All Blacks, we're expected to win all the time, but if we don't, well, get on with it.
Sid going. Here's John Williams on the halfway line.
They started off at great speed. Lots of things were happening very, very quickly.
That's the pine tree. See how they slip it back. That's Sid going. Mervyn Davis.
Sid Gowen was electrifying. He was dictating the manner in which the game was being played, linking up with his back row, creating lots of problems, and he tore us to bits.
Edwards. Norton on his knees. What a good tackle by Going.
Do you think Sid going against Gareth Edwards was one of the great head-to-heads?
Oh, sure, yeah. Completely different players in some ways. I mean, Gareth had that great pass of Barry could stand right back, and Sid wasn't regarded as a great passer, but he was a runner, and he was so centre gravity was sort of like this, and he was a dangerous, strong, nuggety runner, and he was, I would have hated to play against him too often.
Oh, that was John and Edwards misunderstanding each other.
Gareth Edwards was the type of person, if he wasn't in himself 100% fit, he wouldn't perform to his particular level.
Edwards looking blind.
You want to be at your best. You want to sort of be as fit as you can be. But when you're carrying injuries and you've got nobody else to play in that position, then you have to overcome them.
That's Edwards. There's a misunderstanding with John and Edwards there.
The management would also be sort of pressurising you to sort of get back, wondering whether your injuries were psychological and all that kind of thing, which only added to the pressure.
Going's ball, Sid Going. Beautiful channelled heel that. Wiley Holding on the blind side, Burgess. He's only 1 yard there. What a good score! What a brilliant score!
Bob Burgess, our running first five, scored a couple of tries, I think, that day, and I was involved in a penalty try.
35 yards out this scrum. The Lions drive. Number 8, Wiley.
I was about to score one, and Gerald jumped on my back, and I carried him across the ground as the ball hit the turf. and John Pring, the referee, went under the bar.
And he's getting a penalty try. Let's see it again. What happened?
Brian Williams, I can recall, scored a good try on the blind side and that sort of thing. Because I can remember being in the scrum and Sean Lynch was telling me when I'm button heads with him, is that the best sort of scrum you can put down? And I said, have a look up, boy, we've just scored.
Back on the left side. This is constant pressure. That's Sid going. Underneath it, the inevitable, the brilliant, the exciting John Williams. He's got two and outside. Gibson's with him. Gibson's got Gerald Davis. Can he get there? He's got 25 yards to go. What a run it is. He's going under the sticks.
Perhaps the vivid image of that test was the try of Ian Kirkpatrick as he just fended off tackler after tackler.
And this is where the All Blacks are strong. Look at that, Ian Kirkpatrick, the big man. He's got 30 yards to go. Can Barry John get him? He can't. What a try! Oh, what a wonderful try!
The line I ran, I suppose, and the way they came at me suited me because I delayed sort of feeding them, and of course when they start to go down and sort of lowish at you, and then you've got them, you know, you just have to turn around and wait, delay it and bang and push them off. And I might have changed the ball over a couple of times and got a couple from each side, and sort of, you know, it was just pretty lucky for me in that respect.
What a score by the great man Kirkpatrick. What a try. 6 foot 2.5, 16 stone 3, speed of a stag. What a magnificent try by Kirkpatrick.
We won reasonably easily, but not without a bloody battle, I might add. But, you know, it was just a game that I guess went our way. It was a bit like what didn't happen in Dunedin happened in Christchurch, and we, you know, things went our way and we got on top of them and we managed to, you know, keep that margin right through the game.
On the 25, plenty of time for Cottrell to get that one clear, and that's it. And what a great victory it's been for the All Blacks.
Now, I would say, quite honestly, that in the losing of the second test, I felt we had the winning of the series. Because so many things happened in that second test, I felt we could improve upon, and our counter-attacking game by this time was pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Going, hovering round. John looking for the drop ball. What a beautiful piece of play. That's a great dummy. The big John Williams. He's got doors with him.
We started playing the type of game that Carwyn had always said was going to win the series for us. When JPR, Gerald all intertwined and ran from deep.
This is Duckham on the outside. What beautiful play.
And Gerald Davis scored a fabulous try. And they had no answer to it.
Gerald Davis. Can he get there in the corner? What a run. Great score. What a try.
That was the moment we realised we could win the series.
Beautiful play. John Williams has got support on his right.
I think that was Carwyn's finest moment. He said, boys, I now know we can win the series. And although you lost, suddenly you were elevated to think, oh, well, that's good. Great.
The sense of optimism in defeat was complemented by victories in the next 4 provincial matches. Christchurch was put behind them. Forward they went.
Oh, yeah.
John Williams, Bevan, Gibson, Williams, Arneal, Davis. Will Davis towing it ahead. It's a fine try.
I don't think they'd seen somebody approach the game. Not only myself, with Mike Gibson, JPR was running from the deep and things like this, and somebody like Gerald, you know, flying down the right-hand touchline and drop the shoulder and a sidestep and bouncing and accelerating, and he's scoring fantastic tries.
6 yards outside the 25. Lions have won it. It's good ruck ball. Davis, one man to beat for a hat-trick.
Deep down to some of us anyway, we wanted the beautiful tries, you know, out to Gerald Davis. Gerald beats 2 men, links inside, John Taylor comes over there, switches it back, and, you know, the perfect glorious try.
They've won the ruck. Dawes, Gibson. Davis. Wonderful rugby.
If the tour was immediately back on track, there still had to be a rethink. Carwyn James surveyed his options and made changes. Gordon Brown, Broon of Troon, came into the second row. And to contain Ian Kirkpatrick and Sid Going, in came the uncapped Derek Quinella Llanelli. Meanwhile, in the All Black camp, coach Ivan Vodanovic was still letting victory sink in.
Psychologically, you need to be brought back to earth that this is another game in another place. And so, hey, you know, flick out of it. It's not going to be easy. It's got to come from the coach, and we needed drilling, really, but we never got it. It wasn't quite Ivan Vodanovic's style.
Do you think that actually Carwyn James might have outthought Ivan Vodanovic?
Oh, completely. Carwyn James was a brilliant coach. He was a great thinker of the game, and before they ever got to New Zealand, he always said there was a weak link in the New Zealand team, but wouldn't name him. Well, we all thought it was us, you know. Every player thought, well, and particularly me, because I was 35 or 36, and they think, well, he's over the bloody hill and that sort of thing. So you had all those sort of things going on.
He was obviously a very smart cookie. They were always going to be probing into our weaknesses, and you know, they did that well. He was no fool, Carwyn James, that's for sure.
The Lions left the South Island for the last time and crossed the Cook Strait to Wellington, where they had played some of their best rugby. But that was 15 games ago. Now it was the third test at Athletic Park, with the series all square.
The third test between the British Lions and New Zealand, the most vital match that any British Lion player will ever play in his life. Barry John, Mike Gibson, Gerald Davis, see the swing of the hips. That was a beautiful run. He's on the 10-yard line. That's the halfway line. The New Zealand 25, covering there is Hunter. Hunter, beautiful tackle that by John Taylor. Under the post, they must ruck it now. Can they get it? Beautifully back to Barry John, looking for the drop goal. He's done it.
Barry John, consummate. But what about his half-back partner?
Edwards into the open space.
The mighty Gareth Edwards had gone off injured in the first test, had been outplayed in the second.
By his standards, he'd been below par, and we all knew, and there's got to be a performance in him. And I remember a few days before, come on, Gareth, this is the one we want you. You've got to perform now. And he came out unbelievable.
Taylor's deflection. Edwards. He's nearly under the post. Can he get there to Barry John? And Barry John has scored. What a try.
Knowing I was fully fit, ready for it, preparation had gone very well. I wanted to prove that I could play the game.
It peeled beautifully off the back of the line, ran straight at Bob Burgess, and Bob had long hair. He was a hippie, he was a freak out in New Zealand because everybody was short hair. And Bob was there. And Bob came at him, and Gareth got him with the right hand like that and pushed him clean up, and his hair went, and the spray that came out like that.
And Barry, of course, had read it perfectly. He was right on my shoulder.
Instead of running away from him, I cut my line across to be alongside him. That's all it was then, a little pop pass, and he skated in.
Edwards handing off Burgess, the strength, the determination, the finesse of John at the end.
In the third test, the guys talking in the team room before the game, everybody just thought, this is okay, we can definitely beat these guys. And then we did, we beat them very easily.
5 yards now from the All Black line. Can the Lions ruck this ball? They can to Edwards. Edwards going. Davis is there. Gerald Davis has scored a try. Brian Lahore's deflection. Sid going to Wayne Cottrell. He's got with him Duncan. Joseph on the burst. Underneath the posts. Back beautifully. Mains. Joseph couldn't get it. Fell over a dog.
But we just didn't play well, you know, we didn't gel. The Lions got a sniff again and Barry kept pushing it behind us and, you know, we were up against it all right. And we just didn't work for us.
Sid going. It's the drive of the Lions to Barry John. The Lions have done it. That's one of the great feats in rugby history as far as British Lions are concerned. It's been a day that none of the boys who have played on the field will ever forget. And what a tremendous climax now the last test in 2 weeks' time will be at Auckland.
The series could not be lost. The All Blacks had been overturned at the very moment when they were accustomed to taking full control.
I think in those days we probably hadn't come up against a team like that British Isles team at that stage. But Barry John just carved us up. Gosh, we went home in the absolute depression after that match in Athletic Park.
I've never seen a display by outside half for over an extended period of time that comes anything close to what he able to do.
There was nothing that Barry didn't feel he couldn't do on that tour. He just portrayed how simple the game can be, and he was majestic, and it was a pleasure to watch him perform.
You're there to conduct the orchestra. You're the main playmaker. You're pulling the strings. Catch it and give it and let the greyhounds go or let them loose. That's it. It was a pretty simple task, to be honest.
So much time in the ball, he treated them with disdain in many ways. No one could get anywhere near him. He was so light and evaded the tackles. He was the king.
I didn't have a clue about line-out signals, what they were. So if I'd been kidnapped and drugged and they said, give us the line-out signals, I didn't know what the hell they were on about. I didn't know we had any. And my motto is to tell the boys, just get me the ball. How you get it, I don't care. Just get me the ball. Out there on the pitch, I felt absolutely wonderful. Free, I can do what the hell I want here. You know, it's my little paradise, this. Leave me alone. And I was alone, so you could just go out and explain and declare yourself. Marvellous feeling.
Who do you remember of the Lions of 1971? Do you remember?
Well, I named a baby after Barry John.
You never did?
Yeah, I did. Barry John Henry. It was just one of those things. He was the second boy we had, and he was a bit brand new. And Barry John just seemed to fit. But yeah, it sounded like a good name at the time. They promoted Barry John a lot.
Yeah. King John.
Well, you might have called him King John, but...
The tourists headed north for the final 3 provincial games and the last test, always played at Eden Park in Auckland. There were storylines to tie up to remain unbeaten in the non-test games. John Bevan to equal the try record set by Tony O'Reilly of Ireland in 1959, 17 tries for the Lions in New Zealand.
You are weary. You've spent 3.5 months changing hotels twice a week. You wined and dined, you got to go for receptions. It's now taken its toll, and certainly the last couple of weeks of the tour are hard.
It's like a final lap in a marathon, I suppose. You know, you've done so far, you've worked all the way. Don't mess it up now. You know, come on, boys.
Well, hello everyone from Auckland in the North Island of New Zealand. and some 56,000 here in this garden-like setting at Eden Park have paid more than $130,000 to see the 1971 Lions play this, the most important and last game on New Zealand soil.
Eden Park. They said, oh, a draw will be enough to win the series. Manager Doug Smith, way back after their first defeat against Queensland, had said that the Lions would win the Test series 1-2, lost 1, drawn 1. But in rugby, a draw is an unusual result. In 100 tests since 1891, there have been just 9 draws. It was as improbable as JPR dropping a goal from 45 metres. These things simply didn't happen.
Davis, Barry John, Mike Gibson on the 10-yard line. That's a nice one into the box, covering Wayne Cottrell, full of experience. That's what experience counts, knowing what to do and what glorious running. The inside pass is a 3-1 situation, but
it's more desperation, I suppose, really. All we could do was draw it. I guess there was incentive alone. Yeah, we couldn't win it. Well, fine, get on with it. We've got to beat these guys and at least come away with a drawn series.
Sid going, number 8 forward Wiley, the dummy. Beautiful piece of work that. This could be a try, but a great tackle that and snap up a try for Cottrell.
We started pretty well that game and looked as if we could take it out. But that was a great Lions side. They had lots of, really top players, lots of experience.
Edwards, 2 yards short. Can he get there? He's 1 yard short now. Back on the Lion side. Over they are, and it's a score. Let's see.
Was there an element of concern now that you might be the first to go down to the Lions?
Oh, no, we weren't. You don't go in with that concern. You go in, we're going to win, with a straight out. And, I always think we'd have scored a try if it hadn't have been for JPR Williams. I think he bowled Jas Muller and nearly killed the poor bucket.
Pick up now by Muller. John Williams was with him. Well, that was a moment that I'd love to see again. The big man, the biggest in the side, and the Lions full-back, the only thing between number 1 Muller and glory and the line.
And then he drop-kicked the goal, and it's the only one he ever drop-kicked in his bloody life. So, and it was from bloody 45 yards out. It wasn't an easy drop-kick or anything like that. And so, there was a bit of magic in their team.
The ball was out on the near the touchline, and we were throwing it infield, and we were going backwards, actually. And so I got the ball on the back foot, really. And there were a couple of people outside, and I didn't want to shovel the bad ball on any further. So I thought, well, let's have a go for it. And I just hit it perfectly, and it was still rising when it went over the post.
JPR decided that he'd be a drop kicker. I don't think he'd ever got a drop kick in his life, had he?
No.
And he banged it over from damn halfway.
Gareth Edwards waiting for this one. Duckham flinging it out. John Williams, the full-back. Oh, he turned well, and he did it. John Williams, number 15 there.
We're on the way to the Test match. Everyone was very tense, so I stood up and said, OK, guys, today I'm going to drop a growl. And everyone just burst out laughing. They sort of cut the ice. And that's why I turned to the reserves in the stand after I did it with the thumbs up.
15 there. John Courageous Williams hit that one straight and through.
We're nearly there. We're nearly touching the winning line. And so I just kicked to the corner and kept the ball and put them under pressure. And in the end, so we trapped them in there for the last 5 or 6 minutes. So it wasn't glorious stuff, but as I said, that was a result job.
As Sid going feeds this one. Cottrell with him going blind. The knock on. And that's it. That's it. A drawn match here. 14 points all at Eden Park. But the British Lions have won the series.
When you put something on a pedestal like this, and you actually crack it, it's a letdown in many ways. What's after this? I climbed Everest. There's nothing after Everest.
A great day, Carwyn, in a life that has been a very distinguished one in rugby up till now, but this must be one of the moments.
Oh yes, one of the truly emotional moments, that I would have said. The boys played superbly yet again today. It's been a long journey, Cliff. It's been a hard tour. 24 matches here in New Zealand, and the boys have played well with spirit in all these matches, and I think they thoroughly deserve to win the series in the end.
Tortured, tormented Carwyn James, a quiet man who once made the Lions roar. Just the once. He'd never coached them again, he'd never coached Wales. But 40 years ago, he and his team came here and were the best. Because to win in this land of beauty and power and menace, you have to be the best.
In the history of rugby football, to come back to London Heathrow and to find there were thousands of people who had travelled the length and breadth of this country of ours to greet us home. It was an amazing moment to think that that's what we had meant to so many people.
I didn't realise at the time that we'd created history. It hadn't hit home, if you like. The fact that no British side ever won a test series in New Zealand prior to 1971. And now we're talking 40 years on here, no British side has ever won a test series since then. So it's pretty unique in the annals of British rugby.
So we went to New Zealand and we played 24 games, 4 tests, 20 provincials, and we only lost 1 game. And that is a phenomenal achievement, and that will never ever be repeated.
If you had said 40 years ago that I'd be sitting here talking about winning the series in 71, I would never have believed you. But it happened, and something to treasure.
I think in life sometimes it was meant to be. It was meant to be, and maybe we were the people who are meant to be to achieve it.
And the build-up to Wales's Rugby World Cup semi-final match against France begins tomorrow morning. That's at 7 a.m. on BBC Radio Wales.